Hey everybody, welcome to the 1947 Rise podcast, a podcast that helps India-born, US-trained Indians get integrated into the Indian technology ecosystem and inspires them to move back to India to build massive tech companies and or help enable the tech ecosystem. We do this by interviewing India-born, US-trained Indians who have moved back to India and built massive tech companies themselves and or helped enable the tech ecosystem. I'm excited to have Ankit Wadhwa on the 1947 Rise podcast today. Ankit is the founder of Rario. Rario is unleashing the non-fungible token revolution for everyone. Ankit is on a mission to build a digital cricket economy powered by NFTs. Rario recently raised a 100 million round led by Dream Capital. Prior to Rario, Ankit founded Wadi in UAE, worked at McKinsey, Google, and got his MBA from Wharton. Ankit, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me here, Shiva.
Ankit, let's dive right into it. Walk us through your journey of growing up in India, then moving to the US, and then you moved to UAE, and then you ended up moving back to India. What made you move back to India, and how was your move like back to India?
Uh, yeah, I think so. I must have started my career sometime in 2005, and ever since it's been, I had the opportunity to work in various parts of the world. So it's always, I think, exciting to be present in your home territory, but with the experience of a lot of diverse locations. I think at some point of time in everybody's career, people must work not necessarily outside of their geographies, but at least with people from outside their geography. Because, you learn to appreciate diversity in terms of the way people think and behave and kind of approach work, life, and everything else. So I started my career with McKinsey in India. This was in 2005. And that also gave me the opportunity to work with the firm in the US, in France, in parts of Europe. Um, and I think that's where the learning along that journey started. Um, yes, and sort of exposure to the US also helped in understanding, the way higher education, management education in particular, was approached in the United States, which was actually quite exciting. The likes of Wharton, Stanford on the other side of the coast, Howard on this side. Um, Outside in, you might sometimes think it's about a brand, but it goes significantly beyond that. Right? The exposure you get of interacting with some of the world's most renowned and best faculty members, people whose books you've otherwise read on various topics are suddenly there and they are teaching you. That does change the entire perspective, and it's not just them; it's the composition of the classes. When you have Olympians who are also sitting with you and learning the same topics, when you have people who come from, who have at that time had set up many companies, sold them. A lot of that really comes together in helping you evolve as an individual and as well as a business manager. That was the US part of the story, which also touched a little bit upon Google on the other side of the planet of the United States. That was also, I think, a short stint, but a very enjoyable stint. I actually had done my internship during business schooling with Google. Coming from the grooming in India, where you were sort of looking at more of a traditional, structured, well-planned sequential path, to actually working with very similar workplaces all the way up to the MBA. I think Google opened up very different dimensions on, what probably seems like quite normal right now, but in 2010, 2011, the way I think Google had created a lot of the culture that you see in a lot of technology companies today. That was also the time when if I remember correctly, then a lot of people were joining Facebook from across various companies in the ecosystem. And I remember, like Facebook also had the same cook who used to earlier work in one of Google's kitchens. So yes, definitely the culture, not just the culture, but a lot of other dimensions of what Google had created. And though this was also a time, when McKinsey was traditionally considered as the best place to work. And then suddenly it became a question of whether it's McKinsey, whether it's Google. And soon I think we've seen the story play out thereafter. I think technology companies um, have become very, very relevant and a preferred destination for most people who are looking to start their careers. So that was the American part of the journey. Um, I after my business schooling, I came back to McKinsey, but this time in Dubai, in the Middle East, which also I believed at that time was a rising and emerging geography. Because actually a lot of the moves I keep looking back at my career, a lot of my moves have been sort of opposite of the direction in which people would typically move. And so when people were moving to the US, I was moving out of the US. When sort of Middle East was yet to become hot, it seemed like an exciting geography with a lot of potential because there were a lot of things that we had seen evolve already in other parts of the world, but were not there locally in the Middle East when it came to businesses and technology execution. But I mean, the cohort of users definitely had the dollars to spend and a desire to spend those dollars. I mean, 90% of the population of UAE is expat. So it's not that people were not exposed already to businesses. So that happened. That was the Middle East. We built Wadi, which competed aggressively in the e-commerce space. India was being led by Flipkart and Snapdeal at that time. So we were more than 1,000 people, 36 cities, 6 countries. I think the geography went through a wave of consolidation. Amazon entered the geography at some point in time, bought Souk, which was our competitor. We were acquired by Carrefour in the Middle East, also known as Majidal for them. So Wadi became a part of this new ecosystem. And I think the geography has only evolved further from there. So that was also, I mean, where we stand today, you do see a lot of people very enthusiastic about working in the Middle East. I mean, I remember the first few years, and maybe we can take a part of that credit on educating the population in India and other parts of the world that, look, this is a great place and that your future is going to be very exciting as we move to the Middle East as well. I think from there to where we are today, where actually even Web3 and crypto founders are looking at Dubai as their primary destination of work. I think the world has come a long way, and I would say even hats off to UAE for being dynamic in always having a reason for newer and newer, groups of people to come in, build their lives, build their careers and their businesses in the geography. And but I think as everybody is now moving to the UAE, so in my mind the question was, where do I go next? And what better than being associated with India, the home territory? I think anything that you solve anywhere in the world and you bring the same solution to India, it is already 10 times bigger. Yeah, it's the sheer population dividend that we have. So every solution becomes bigger, every sort of implementation becomes bigger, and somewhere along that thinking, Rario was born as an NFT platform focused on cricket. Cricket is the second largest sport with more than 1.5 billion followers. Yeah, it's a very, very big number, more than 150 crore followers. And I think the number actually that is quoted in the media many times is also 2.5 billion. I think it's somewhere in that range. Both are very large numbers. So basically, second largest amongst the largest followership globally, partially because India is all about cricket. It's also South Asia, Pakistan, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, where sort of cricket is the first sport. Also Australia, UK. And I mean, today we are seeing sales of our NFT platform across more than 20 countries globally, which also map not just countries that play cricket, but countries that have our South Asian diaspora that has also moved there. So you asked me about the journey. You asked me about, how the geographic kind of evolution happened. I think maybe a part of an entrepreneur's life is also about thinking about opportunities before they become commonplace. And I think we are already talking about it, right? Like it's been a year and a half for us since we started. But the world is talking about India becoming the next big Web3 destination, and probably leadership in this new revolution that is happening in the in the digital dimension will see leadership from this part of the world. I mean, unlike the last few major revolutions, I mean, when PCs came about, the world changed. But in India, we were still figuring out whether we can participate or probably not. We were observing. When internet came about in a very similar way, we were observers, right? I think it's the mobile revolution where we started taking a little bit of a position of saying that we are not just going to be observers, but this one definitely we see as Web3 becoming sort of a new dimension of what technology provides to users. And you will see a lot of use cases. I mean, there's a reason for it as well, right? Like internet may have democratized information. Web3 is democratizing trust. And a lot of developed geographies already have systems and processes where trust is taken care of to an extent. We come from geographies where we need stronger systems. Blockchain is providing that kind of an infrastructure layer. So back to India, back working on something, and hopefully again, in the rising tide, or so it seems.
Yeah, you have a knack for looking for the opportunities, and opportunities are where it's not obvious yet, right? Like when people were moving to US, you move to UAE. Now people are moving to UAE, you move back to India, and of course, I think a lot of the experiences that one has growing up, that of course at the minimum it shapes the character of that person. Plus, it helps in a lot of ways. So, for example, I get a sense that you're building Rario from India and for the world. You're already in different markets because and you get you understand those.
I am in India does not mean Rario is being built out of India. We are a company that was born in the pandemic. And consequently, I mean, I think the company is being built on Slack more than anywhere else because we have people who are working with us from all parts of the world. My co-founders in London, I know we have employees in Ireland, and I'm talking about like people who are making a big difference to us. Yeah, like Netherlands, India is definitely we do have quite a few people who work for us here. But it's not just limited to one geography. And honestly, I'm sitting on my desk. This is my work desk. Likewise, everybody else has a work desk. We don't have an office in the traditional form because when we started, no one was going to office. So yes, I think I am building from here, but there are people building from London. There are people building from other parts of the world. And I think this is probably the new way of working. And you would see this also in a lot of Web3 companies. Because sort of that evolution also has happened alongside the pandemic. So, which is great because now we have the ability to tap global talent. And, even in our mindset, we are not grounded in just the physical geography. Sorry to have interrupted your statement, but I think it's a different world. It's not. It feels great to be back, building for India as much. Yeah, like when you build cricket, you do build for India. But I think contributions are coming from everyone in every part of the
world. And that's the beauty of Web3, right? And it's one of the core values as well, which is decentralization. And Ankit, what's the magical outcome that you hold for Rario?
Look, if someone studied economics ever, one of the things you talk about is economies being built on an exchange of goods and services. And faster this exchange happens, the more an economy grows. And the more an economy grows, the better, the lives of everyone in the economy. People earn a better income. there is more job creation, more liquidity in the market, and so on. But if you go back to the fundamental principle of economies being built on exchange of goods and services, I think in the blockchain world now with NFTs, we are seeing a digital rendition of goods. Yeah, so and it kind of aids in the movement of goods in a very similar manner as the tokens move from one person to another. So, along with other components of the blockchain ecosystem, I mean, collectively it gives you the opportunity to create digital economies in ways that have not been seen before. Because everything we were doing before this, the economies were always physical. We probably used digital channels as connectors that made things faster. Yeah, where information was being delivered, it just got delivered faster. I mean, you could place an order on Amazon and it would get delivered to your home, but the money that you paid and the product that you got were not an integral part of the digital ecosystem. I mean, you could say that, yes, I paid using my credit card, which is an online payment, but that's also a money system that operates separate from the goods ecosystem. I think as we look at what's happening with Web3, I mean, a lot of those ecosystems are coming together on the blockchain, right? In ways and therefore creating business and apps that have never been seen before. Yeah. Now, as we are building NFTs, you asked me about Rario. So Rario is in the business of building cricket NFTs. Yeah, we partner with cricketing organizations, whether those are cricket boards, cricket leagues, cricketers, and we get licenses to build their NFTs. And what we are doing essentially is building their NFTs and creating an ecosystem where these NFTs can be used. Yeah. So as you create that ecosystem where NFTs can be used, so for instance, if you have, let's say, 11 player NFTs, I have 11 player NFTs, we could enter an app which could simulate a virtual cricket stadium, and your team and my team are basically playing a virtual cricket match. One of us wins, gets winning rewards, moves further in the tournament, and eventually if one of us is winning the final, then not only do we get accolades for our team, but we also get financial rewards possibly, or whatever the structure of that tournament is, right? This is exactly how the real world operates even today when it comes to cricket. So you can, an interesting way of thinking about things is how can we create, or we are creating parallels of the physical cricketing ecosystem with the digital cricket economy. And therefore, a lot of roles that operate in the physical economy also move to the digital economy. Yeah, so some people would say, you know what, I'm just going to look for NFTs early on and I'll be a scout. Yeah, I'll identify players early, and as they grow in the physical world or digital world, I will grow my value. Some people will say I'll be a coach. I'll buy an NFT early, take the person through a digital ecosystem of apps and games, nets kind of apps, practice apps, and grow the performance of my player, and therefore win in the same tournaments. Some people will say, I'm doing this as a franchisee equivalent in the digital world. So I'm building teams. And a lot of people will say, you know what, I'm in it for just for the entertainment of it. So I'll participate, have some fun, and that's what gives me joy. But taking a step back, you asked me what's the one piece vision. The one vision is we are in the early days of creating digital economies. Rario is looking to build a digital cricket economy, and hopefully we'll be able to create something exciting with mass appeal, which creates a template for many, many more sectors to follow. And that's the revolution that we are very excited about. And as that starts, we would feel that our contribution to how the world changes yet again with another new technology would be complete.
It's fascinating. It's super, super interesting. And Ankit, if let's say you want to give a quick overview of what NFTs are to a 5-year-old, can you do that?
It's probably easier to give that overview to a 5-year-old than to a 50-year-old. Because the younger generation has seen digital goods with the esports already. They recognize the importance of owning an avatar and buying skins for that avatar on Fortnite, for instance, and how that is valuable in the community and the ecosystem that they operate in, right? So if you have to think about NFTs in that context, if you were to buy an avatar or a skin, now that was always limited to your Fortnite or whichever game you were playing. Now you're outside the game, but you still own that asset. And that asset can go from one game to another. So let's say you have a character which is in one game, but you're able to use the same character in another game. And not just the character, you're also able to move further with the characteristics of that avatar. So whether that is experience levels that have been gained, whether that is the look and feel, and that is what NFTs are providing to a lot of the utility ecosystem or apps and games that are being built in the Web3 world. Now, there are use cases that we've already seen. What I'm talking about is where the world is moving. But there are use cases we've already seen. I mean, people are already looking at collectibles. We are building digital trading cards of players. I mean, essentially, they fulfill the same purpose. You can buy a digital trading card of a player. You can use it in various games and apps on our ecosystem as they will be introduced and launched over time. And I mean, essentially, that is an asset that you're grooming and building, and then you could take it back to the marketplace and earn your rewards of the effort that you put in on that asset. Not different from esports, or at least gaming does lead the way in the thinking here. And what we are building in the Web3 world just breaks down any walls that are there. What you would have seen in these sort of walled garden ecosystems now is available everywhere. I hope that definition would work for a 5-year-old.
It does. It does. I think you said it the right way. It's actually harder to tell a 50-year-old than a 5-year-old. We'll switch gears here. If, let's say, money and attention are not needed anymore, what would you work on? And we'll put Rario on the side.
I mean, money and attention are usually the last two drivers and motivate. The motivation is largely driven by what are we changing. If money and attention are drivers, then you stick to the geography that you've always worked in. Like the counter flow is also led by the fact that can you create greater change? Yeah, can you transform things? And if money and attention happen, that should be a consequence, not the desire. The day that becomes desire, it's better to not be in business. Or probably be in the media business, because that's the business of attention and not money. I would say even money is a consequence there as well. But
they're byproducts.
Yeah, they're byproducts. I mean, I think if we are able to create examples of what would lead the world in this third major technology revolution of our lives, it would have changed the way the world looks at our country. We would have moved from observers to leaders. Yeah. And that would give a lot of personal satisfaction because, I mean, you talked about briefly about the crypto brain drain, and it has been discussed. I mean, the beauty of building what we are building would be in staying and building it, and sort of solving for whatever challenges come along the way. Yeah. And yeah, so I think we are here, we are in various places where we are, we are grounded, and we would like to really build based on that. I mean, it's not about money, and I think it's the quantum of change that you can create, and you want to be in an ecosystem where that quantum can be high. The effort might be high, but if the impact is even higher, then actually that makes sense. Then the geography becomes a little irrelevant.
Driving the change is what's driving you. And Ankit, who are you outside of work? Or let me put it this way, like, I know you, or we know you because of you being an internet entrepreneur now building in Web3 space. What do your friends know you for?
That's a good question. Probably the same things. Yeah, when your work becomes life, there is not
Yeah.
much beyond what you do at work.
Uh-huh.
Um, yeah, it's a good question. I probably the right people to ask are my friends.
I think I need to become your friend now, and I'll tell you. I'll tell you who are you outside of work.
Yeah, yeah. I mean,
Uh,
our reality is it's entrepreneurship is not easy. It consumes you, and I think from the time I'm awake to the time I go off to sleep, um, the only thing that we focus on is what we have to build. I mean, there is so much to do. It's not saying that I should be a role model for people. I think there are enough people in the world who can be better role models when it comes to work-life balance. But this is, you ask me, what am I outside of work? There is no outside of work. This is us. This is me.
yeah.
This is the way we always work. And I mean, so I guess the same is also true for my co-founder. But a lot of this is not just from a desire to work harder or longer. It's just so much fun. I mean, I remember when I moved from McKinsey to the first entrepreneurial venture, I must have worked 7 days a week for several years. And the question in my mind was, look, every day feels like a weekend because this is so much fun. When work becomes fun, then it's not a question of work versus fun. Yeah. So and when work is not fun, then probably you just move on to the next thing that you do.
No, I think it's a blessing. When you come to a point where to you the work you're doing is fun. It seems like fun, and then that's where you can really perform well as well. Uh,
I remember
and
somebody
Ankit,
asked me this question in year 3, year 4 of the entrepreneurial journey that, why do you work like non-stop many times? I say, look, this is almost like being on a weekend non-stop. Um, so I think, let me try not to exaggerate that point, but yes, with age, you need a little bit more rest than you did earlier. We are older people now than we were. But yes, I mean, even now, I mean, this is so much fun. You can actually, um, see how the world is changing, and the fact that we have the ability to be in an early mover position to lead from the front energizes us every day. So in the mornings when you're waking up, and actually many times it energizes you because there's no template. You have to create the template for everyone else, right? So yeah, that's what happens outside of work. And maybe the now the one leisure activity I have is my son is 2.5 years old. So whatever time goes away from work, it's with him.
gotcha. And look, you've had a very fantastic journey so far, right? In terms of career, and of course, still a long way to go. And most of the time, we are just figuring it out. And I get like when things are not going the way that you want them to go. Most of the time, that's how it is, right? Things are not going the right way. You're just figuring it out. But what's the framework or anything or any questions you ask yourself to be able to get back on the track?
Things never go the way you want to plan them. All if it depends on also depends on how you plan, right? If you have a longer term vision based goal, then eventually things have a way of making their way back on the path. um, but if you have a short term plan, I mean, you will discover new ways of getting the same things done. Priorities are going to change. I mean, that's a part of our lives, right? So things don't go as per our plans all the time, but I think eventually things do. So when you talk longer term, you talk about the vision, mission, etc. I think those things eventually do work out. But I think if your question is how do you sort of handle uncertainty, yeah, that comes with that. Um, I think sometimes you're just that personality type that handles us uncertainty better. Um,
Mhm.
And other than that, when enter the entrepreneurial world, and you will automatically become someone who's. I mean, there've been days where I would enter office, and the first question I'd be like, okay, tell me what's the burning fire of the day, because something has gone bad, something mega has happened. It's like the biggest. disaster of all times, but it happens very regularly, and you become the firefighter. So you don't throw a fit or a panic every time you see a fire if you're a firefighter. So, but it takes a little bit of training, because in the beginning, yes, everything seems like, oh my God, this has happened and that has happened, and that's a part of startup life. So if you enjoy the thrill of it, this is a great world to be in, a startup. If not, I mean, the amount of comfort and convenience that is offered to employees, and how, by larger stable organizations, are also very worth considering for people who are thinking about career, etc. Yeah. But yeah, that's, you asked me about uncertainty. Like, how do we handle it? Like, literally, it's like, okay, you pick up one thing at a time every day. You say, this is what I'm going to do to address it.
Love it. Ankit, thanks a lot for making the time to come on the podcast. Really appreciate you for doing that. And I had tons of fun and looking forward to your journey and your team's journey at Rario, what it ends up becoming, in the next 5 years or a decade or more. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. Thank you. Nice talking.